Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. As the sun began to set over the small town of Maplewood, the edge of twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and deep purple. A once quiet community now held its breath as an unsettling hush descended. Nestled between expansive cornfields, Maplewood had always boasted a low crime rate and a tight-knit atmosphere where doors rarely needed locking. That tranquility was shattered one October evening when 32-year-old Anna Connors failed to return home from her evening job. Well regarded by neighbors and co-workers alike, Anna was the kind of woman who greeted everyone with a smile. She had recently secured a promotion at the local library, where she was deeply passionate about nurturing young readers. Her absence sent ripples of concern through the town, sparking frantic searches and rumors. The clock ticked slowly in the Connors household. Hurries the living room, nerves taut with worry. "She always comes back by 6, he murmured, his eyes darting to the door as if willing her to appear. Reports poured in from community members who had joined the search, but as night cloaked Maplewood in darkness, hope began to fade. That first night felt eternal, with whispered fears hanging in the air as shadows stretched long across the familiar streets. By morning, the shifting winds carried an ominous feeling, for each unturned stone in the search felt like a giant chasm of unanswered questions. Still, few could admit what lay at the heart of their growing apprehension, a profound fear that something unspeakable waited to be uncovered. The victim, Anna Connors, was more than just a missing person. To many in Maplewood, she epitomized resilience and warmth. Her laughter could be heard echoing in the library's children's section, where she orchestrated story hours each Saturday, captivating young minds with tales of adventure and wonder. Born and raised in Maplewood, Anna had deep roots in the community. Her family had been a part of its fabric for generations. Memories painted a vivid portrait of her life, the way she triumphantly finished the local marathon last year, completely transforming her health after years of battling insecurity. Friends described her as dedicated, always investing her time, not just in her work but in those around her. Between her visits to the local food bank and volunteering at the animal shelter, Anna lived to uplift others. Yet those who knew her best understood her struggles too. The tragic passing of her younger brother, a victim of an overdose, had left an indelible mark on her heart. It ignited a fire in her to create change, urging her toward youth outreach programs and mental health awareness. Perhaps it was this blend of vulnerability and strength that struck a chord with so many in the community, what made her disappearance all the more jarring. As investigators began to piece together the outline of Anna's life, they gathered stories of her compassion and light, juxtaposed against the dark uncertainty of her fate. A pang of dread began to settle over the townsfolk as they realized the truth. Anna was not just a victim in a vacuum. She was a beloved figure in a town wrestling with an unbearable loss and the promise of questions left unanswered. With each retold memory, the weight of sorrow increased. Could they truly find her, or had her vibrant spirit already slipped away? Crime scene. The day following Anna Connors' disappearance, the Maplewood Police Department launched an extensive search operation, but it wasn't until noon that something pivotal was discovered. A local farmer, tending to his fields just outside town, stumbled across an unsettling sight. A pair of running shoes nestled among the cornstalks. Their bright orange laces stood out, a stark contrast against the muted greens and browns of the autumn landscape. When the police were called, they cordoned off the area, marking the scene with reassuring yellow tape. As dusk approached, Detective Laura McKenzie arrived on site, her stomach churning at the sight. She aimed to remain composed, but apprehension crept into her mind. The shoes confirmed their worst fears. The unthinkable might have happened. With each methodical step into the field, Laura surveyed the area for further evidence. Twigs cracked beneath her feet as a handful of officers combed the perimeter, their flashlights cutting through the gathering gloom. The humidity of the approaching autumn night weighed heavy in the air, absorbing sound and amplifying tension. As the investigation progressed, the quiet murmurs of townsfolk were replaced by anxious whispers. They gathered outside the police line, eyes wide with fear of what the officers might uncover. Laura's team meticulously gathered samples of soil, and nearby foliage was examined for any signs of a struggle. Each new piece of evidence, while it hinted at the unfolding tragedy, also fueled speculation. Was this a random act, or did it carry roots deeper into the shadows of Maplewood? The tension in the air thickened. With every ticking second, the reality sunk deeper. Something had gone terribly wrong in their tranquil town. And as they stared into the evening horizon, the darkness loomed over them, pregnant with questions that would soon need answer. Anna's sparkle, once radiating through the streets, felt distant, smothered by the weight of dread enveloping the community. The early investigation, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Detective Laura McKenzie convened a meeting with her team at the station. The atmosphere was thick with urgency, the hum of fluorescent lights framing the tense faces of her fellow officers. With Anna Connors now officially classified as a missing person presumed, abducted, the stakes had never been higher. Laura laid out the initial findings. The shoes found in the cornfield, a lack of reported sightings since her disappearance, and the absence of any logical leads. "We need to exhaust every avenue," she breathed, her voice steady but laced with an edge of determination. She divided her team into two groups. One would scour social media for any leads or sightings, while the other would interview Anna's family, friends, and co-workers, piecing together the last known hours of her life. Within hours, they learned about Anna's routine. A local waitress recalled seeing her jogging along the usual path by the park the evening before. She seemed normal, full of energy, the waitress emphasized as she nervously fidgeted with a coffee mug. A hint of doubt flashed in Laura's mind. Normal wasn't synonymous with safe. Meanwhile, officers reached out to nearby towns, hoping to trace anyone who might have seen something amiss. As their search expanded, escalating whispers circulated in Maplewood. The small town charm gave way to unease, with residents locking their doors tighter and keeping their children closer. Late that night, Laura returned home, tired but driven. On her desk lay a photograph of Anna beaming in a sunlit park, surrounded by children during one of her story hours. The contrast, somehow could this vibrant soul vanish? Laura knew she had to find out. The clock was ticking, and in the dim glow of her lamp, she set her mind to uncovering the truth, ready to dig into the hidden corners of a town she thought she knew. The dead ends, days, morphed into a disheartening blur as the investigation into Anna Connor's disappearance unfolded. Every lead that had once promised hope began to crumble. leaving behind remnants of frustration. As Detective Laura McKenzie convened her team again, the mood in the room was grim. They sat surrounded by a scattered collection of notes, filled with scribbled names and suggestions, none of which had borne fruit. "I wish I could shake this feeling," Laura confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. The faces around her reflected a shared weariness, a growing sense of defeat. They had chased down leads on potential sightings of Anna from a group of joggers in the park to dimly lit bars along the outskirts of town, but each effort led them to the same conclusion. No one had seen her. While interviewing Anna's friends, Laura took note of one name that kept resurfacing: Mark Fielding, Anna's co-worker and a recent acquaintance. "He was always around, you know," one friend had mentioned hesitantly, casting a sideways glance toward Laura. The comment raised a few eyebrows, prompting further exploration of Mark's relationship with Anna. Yet their investigation into him, despite its promise, revealed little worth pursuing. Mark appeared emotionally distraught over Anna's disappearance, spending hours with deputies as he recounted the last moments he'd seen her. His alibi checked out to the diligent detective work, supported by surveillance feed from the library where he claimed to be at the time. Frustration mounted, and the team found itself banging against walls that offered no exit. The tension in the office began to rise as they fought through stagnation, the lack of answers amplifying the anxiety of the community they had sworn to protect. Laura stared out the window, watching the cornfield sway under the wind, feeling the walls of Maplewood close in with an ever more suffocating air. Just as she was about to close her notebook, a new thought struck her. She decided to revisit the cornfield, wanting to prove that anything might have been overlooked. The taste of desperation lingered, but she had to believe there was still something out there, waiting to be found. The community was faltering, and she would not let them down. Not yet. A break in the case. Gray clouds loomed over Maplewood as Detective Laura McKenzie returned to the cornfield, determination driving her forward, despite the thick air of despair. She knew the terrain, while every dip, every rustle of leaves in the wind. Today, however, felt different, as if the land held secrets waiting to be unveiled. After an exhaustive week, hope had become a distant echo. Yet Laura held on to that whisper as she stepped cautiously into the rows of corn. The sound of rustling leaves accompanied her as she methodically traced the path near where Anna's shoes had been discovered. Her heart pounded against her chest. Each moment felt like an eternity as she combed through the underbrush. You never knew what could change the course of an investigation after all. Then she spotted a small, weathered object partially buried in the dirt, glinting faintly in the muted light. Kneeling down, she brushed aside the remnants of earth, revealing a silver bracelet adorned with a single charmless small book. The same one that Anna wore often, a symbol of her love for literature. Chills raced down Laura's spine. This was more than a break. It was a lifeline. Carefully bagging the bracelet as evidence, Laura's mind raced with the implications. Tracking back along the barbs of her thoughts, she recalled Anna's passion for storytelling, how it intermingled with her friend's remarks about her dedication. It was a keeper of memories, a piece of her life discarded in an unyielding field, and it refueled the urgency of the investigation. With newfound conviction, Laura returned to the station. She shared news of the discovery, igniting a renewed energy among the team. If we can trace the bracelet back to someone, if Anna was targeted due to her work, or if someone in her orbit recognized this, her voice trailed off, suffused with hope. As they began combing through Anna's contacts, leads, and interactions, A flicker of light cut through the darkness that had cloaked them for days. Someone must know something. That evening, the atmosphere in the station shifted, the air buzzing with the weight of possibility. Justice felt nearer. Yet with it came the acute awareness that they were treading closer to a truth that might shake Maplewood to its core. The suspect, with the silver bracelet tucked safely in an evidence bag, Detective Laura McKenzie, launched into an exhaustive review of Anna Connor's life. Each interaction became a thread, weaving a tapestry tightly bound around her relationships and routines. As she meticulously followed these threads, one name started to emerge from the shadows: Eric Lane, a fellow volunteer at the library's after-school program. Eric, a somewhat eccentric figure, had an overly enthusiastic zeal for literature and often stayed late in the library, organizing events that spotlighted local authors. To many, he seemed harmless, friendly even, but Laura's intuition suggested that something more sinister lurked beneath the surface. She learned that Anna had recently curtailed their collaborative projects after receiving unsolicited comments about her personal life from him. Comments that had left her uncomfortable. With a bracelet holding significance as a potential piece of evidence, it was time to dig deeper. Laura requested Eric's background check. And as the results flowed in, an unsettling picture materialized. He had a history that hinted at obsessive behavior toward previous acquaintances, a line that blurred the boundaries of normalcy. Together with her team, Laura set up surveillance around Eric's apartment. They hoped he would lead them to something LC wraparound piece, to an unsettling puzzle. Over the next few days, they observed him attending local events, always carrying a notepad filled with frantic notes, while his eyes searched the crowd as if trying to locate someone, even though he usually appeared alone. Then came the pivotal moment. Footage captured a tense encounter between Eric and a local council member, escalating from polite conversation to an animated argument. The council member storming away. Laura's instincts flared at the glimpse of rage in Eric's demeanor. It was a stark reminder everyone masks their truths until it's too late. On the evening of their surveillance wrap-up, Laura gathered her team in the cramped back room of the station. "We need to bring him in," she said, her eyes scanning the faces of her colleagues. "He is too close to Anna's life and those behaviors are troubling. If we can talk to him, maybe we can finally connect the dots." With determination fueling the air, they prepare to confront Eric Lane. The gravity of their decision weighed on Laura as she studied the still images of Anna in the conference room, now transformed into a different kind of urgency. The resolution to protect the memory of a woman who had so profoundly touched so many lives. The trial. The courtroom was filled to capacity as the people of Maplewood gathered to witness the trial of Eric Lane, accused of the abduction and murder of Anna Connors. Tension hung thick in the air, a palpable sense of grief and outrage simmering beneath the surface. Lights flickered harshly against the faces of family members, each one a reminder that justice would be executed or denied in these very walls. Detective Laura McKenzie sat among the gathered crowd, her heart heavy. After months of painstaking investigation, the trial was a culmination of meticulous legwork and the crushing uncertainty surrounding Anna's fate. The prosecution wasted no time, presenting their case with an air of gravity and precision. The silver bracelet, once a lost piece of Anna, now served as a haunting testament against Eric. It had been found buried, discarded like some forgotten part of a brutal crime. Forensic evidence revealed traces of Anna's DNA, and surveillance footage showcased clandestine meetings between Eric and Anna leading up to her disappearance. The prosecution painted a picture of fixation, depicting Eric's escalating obsession and volatile outbursts, especially after Anna distanced herself. Defense arguments revolved around reasonable doubt, attempting to deconstruct the evidence piece by piece. Eric, with disheveled hair and an air of discomfort, maintained a calm demeanor, perhaps in an attempt to convince the judge and jury of his innocence. Yet the whispers circulating through the courtroom reflected skepticism. He had become the subject of fear and suspicion rather than a sympathetic figure. Laura watched intently, her mind racing back to those early days searching for Anna. The room felt crowded not just with seats, but with remnants of hope and despair, entwined tightly as the jury deliberated. Time stretched infinitely, each second melding into the next as Laura's resolve flickered like a candle, the tension mounting in the silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the jury returned. The judge settled in, his gavel tapping against the wood cue that sent pulses of anticipation racing through the packed room. As the verdict was read, the emotional exchange permeated the air, shaking the very foundations of the trial. The word guilty erupted first, a subdued whisper, then a chorus rising in intensity, hitting Laura like a wave. At once, tears brimmed in her eyes, a bittersweet relief washing over her. Justice had come for Anna, albeit tinged with sorrow. As the courtroom erupted into a tumult of emotions, Laura held her breath, knowing this moment would never erase the pain left behind, but would serve to honor the spirit of a woman whose light had diminished too soon. The fight for Anna couldn't reverse the hurt, but it marked the beginning of closure for friends, family, and a town shaken to its core. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, Maplewood struggled to find its footing in the wake of unspeakable grief. Images of Anna Connors pervaded every corner of the town, her smiling face on memorial flyers, in shop windows, tributes at the library, and a makeshift memorial at the park where she had often jogged. The sense of loss lingered heavily in the air, a palpable reminder that the fabric of their tight-knit community had been forever altered. Detective Laura McKenzie found herself caught between relief and sorrow. The verdict had brought a measure of justice, yet it could not bring Anna back. Many nights, she would sit with a cup of coffee, piecing together the memories of months spent investigating Anna's disappearance, retracing each step that had led to this moment. The haunting echoes of unanswered questions continued to torment her, even in the quiet moments away from the station. In the heart of Maplewood, a memorial service was planned in honor of Anna. The air was crisp as townsfolk gathered amidst the gentle sway of autumn leaves, holding candles that flickered poignantly against the dimming sky. Laura stood among the throng, listening to the stories shared, tales of adventure and kindness, laughter and love. Each account carved Anna's essence into the hearts of those present, instilling a newfound will to cultivate compassion in her memory. Mark, Anna's husband, delivered a heart-wrenching speech that sent tremors through the crowd. "She taught every one of us that kindness is power," he said, his voice breaking yet strong. "As we move forward, let's keep her spirit alive in our action." The message resonated deeply, awakening a longing for unity and healing within the community. Over the following months, a series of outreach programs were initiated in Anna's Nay. The library transitioned into a hub of support for mental health awareness, engaging local therapists and educators, while prioritizing the very cause Anna had fought for. Laura carved out time to participate, hoping to contribute to the community in a way that honored Anna's legacy. Yet despite these efforts, shadows loomed over the town. Rumors began circulating about potential accomplices, and the darker secrets hidden within residences where the watchful eye of the law had not yet reached. Laura wrestled with a complex array of emotions, knowing that while one chapter had closed, another perhaps even darker loomed just beyond the horizon. In the wake of justice, Maplewood stood at a crossroads. The choice loomed of whether they would allow fear or hope to dictate their lives. As Laura drove through the familiar streets one evening, she resolved to ensure that Anna's memory would be a beacon. Light blazed warmly in the darkness, instilling a sense of duty in her soul that she would not allow Anna's light to fade silently into the void, but instead encourage it to illuminate a path for the future of the community. Reflection. As the seasons changed and the last vestiges of autumn drifted into winter, Maplewood bore the weight of uncertainty and scarred remembrance. Detective Laura McKenzie often found herself walking the paths Anna had frequented, lingering by the park where the community had congregated to honor a woman they had lost too soon. Each step felt heavy, tinged with both sorrow and a fierce desire for closure. At her favorite cafe, Laura would find solace in the gentle hum of everyday life. Here, conversations flowed freely. Families gathered for evening meals, and laughter punctuated the air. Yet, even amidst life's normal rhythm, there was a shadow, an undeniable reminder of Anna's plate left empty, an absence that rippled through their collective existence. In those moments, Laura contemplated the importance of embracing fragility, how quickly joy could fade into despair, and how intimately connected grief was to the very fabric of life. Through it all, the mental toll of the case clung to her spirit. Laura recalled each face associated with an eye especially Mark, whose eyes shone with both love and loss. He had channeled his grief into building a safe space in the community, igniting conversations on mental health and the impact of trauma. It softened the edges of her own heartbreak, presenting an avenue for healing, rescue, and understanding. As winter settled in, Laura learned that healing was not just an act of erasing pain, but creating meaning from it. She focused on fostering continued outreach, ensuring resources were accessible for anyone dealing with loss, and dedicating herself to educating the community on the value of compassion. Anniversaries would come, bringing reminders of the fragility of life, but she was determined to ensure that the struggle for Anna's memory did not fade into darkness. Reflection often led her to the importance of connection, the intertwining of lives, stories of loss, and resilience that defined a community. With a new sense of purpose, she vowed to honor Anna's spirit for as long as she lived, becoming the voice of those who didn't make it, advocating for kindness, understanding, and the power of community.